Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Let's discuss a number of natural ways that you can help preserve your brain health and preserve your cognition. And beyond the obvious, why this might be the most important area for you to focus on. Whatever challenge you've been given, if it's a health challenge, a work challenge, a social or a relationship challenge, the better you think, the faster you should be able to solve that problem. So these tools that we can use to improve brain health, including cognition, are quite important and something we should pay attention to. So today, let's discuss exercise, beetroot juice, polyphenols, ultra-processed food, how we define those, and what detriment they pose, the Mediterranean diet, fish oil and multivitamin supplementation, fasting, and an enzyme that breaks down histamine called DAO. Welcome to Dr. Ruscio Radio, providing practical, science-based insights into health. We break through the bias and the noise to bring you simple, trustworthy information that matters. Let's start with exercise. You may have been frustrated by the advice of eat less and exercise. This study may shift how we think about that, in that it could be better and more accurately stated that if you exercise, you will eat less. 2023 meta-analysis that found exercising reduced cravings for unhealthy foods. Being a meta-analysis, they looked at 8 different studies. They performed brain scans within a few minutes or within a day after aerobic exercise compared to controls. Now, what was interesting about this study is people, while in a functional MRI and having their brains scanned, were shown photos of pizza, cakes, ice cream, hot dogs, as compared to other images of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. What they found was interesting in that there was reduced cravings for processed foods as evidenced by lower activity in this brain region called the insula. And the insula is a part of the brain that is responsible for, or at least involved in, food craving. Now, one of the things I've noticed, just to tie in my personal experience, is when I'm exercising, I do notice I have less cravings. It's a weird, I guess counterintuitive, other than in light of this study's findings, because you would think if you're exercising more, you'd be hungry. Now, there are certain tie-ins where if I have an extremely vigorous exercise day, I may notice I'm a little bit more hungry. Nevertheless, I have noticed as I've gone through periods of exercising more, exercising less, that on a day when I exercise, I find myself eating less and being less hungry. So for whatever it's worth, you may end up eating less of your own accord and not having to force yourself to eat less if you're exercising. So if you're not yet, please consider starting as soon as you can. And if this video has been helpful, please subscribe, please comment, and if you wouldn't mind, please share this with one person you think it would help. Beetroot. This is also a supplement I take on most days. There was a 2023 crossover randomized control trial. This means that the placebo group and the treatment group were then switched so we could compare across groups to make sure the finding was consistent. Given either 3 grams of beetroot as a powder or placebo, and they found that supplementation with the beetroot led to improved short and long-term memory and also cognitive flexibility. The way I think about cognitive flexibility is task switching. Why was it, perhaps, that the beetroot improved these domains of cognition? Well, we know that beetroot can improve circulation. There's some evidence that has found that beetroot supplementation can improve cardiovascular performance, can increase levels of what's known as nitric oxide, and nitric oxide may improve performance via increasing circulation. As you can imagine, as we've discussed before, polyphenols are what gives fruits and vegetables their color, and obviously beetroot is this bright, rich red, therefore it's rich in antioxidants. And just to briefly touch on the fact that this was, one, randomized control trial, what if we zoom out and look for meta-analyses that have summarized the body of evidence for beetroot? Well, there are no meta-analyses on cognition, but there are meta-analyses on beetroot being able to reduce exercise-induced muscle damage, and a separate meta-analysis that found that beetroot juice, but in this case not powder, led to a reduction in blood pressure. So something to perhaps consider is adding either beetroot juice or powder to your daily routine. We just mentioned polyphenols. These are nutrients in plants that help the body, the human system, manage inflammation and protect against oxidative stress due to, amongst other things, the rich antioxidant content. This is where a 2023 meta-analysis of 37 studies was interesting in that they found that polyphenol consumption in the diet was associated with a 20% lower risk of cognitive impairment. And this may be where the axiom, the recommendation to eat the rainbow has relevance in terms of aim for different colors across the fruits and vegetables that you eat. To quote this paper, habitual inclusion of flavonoids in the diet may play a preventative role in cognitive disorders. And polyphenols and flavonoids are very loosely said, kind of AKAs for what you will get in richly colored fruits and vegetables. And I did want to touch on something that we had covered in a previous video on best foods for brain health, wherein we cite a study listing the most rich polyphenol foods. This includes cloves, peppermint, dark chocolate, flax seeds, rosemary, and blueberries, which is why one of my recommendations was consider pairing chocolate, dark chocolate that is, so it's going to have minimal sugar, with blueberries. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, if we're eating ultra-processed food, those foods are likely supplanting these polyphenol-rich foods that we get from plants. I also just want to say that I'm not making the claim that you have to eat a plant-based diet, but I think an omnivorous diet that includes healthy sources of meat and fish and fat, plus fruits and vegetables, is probably the best, healthiest, most well-rounded and balanced diet. That being said, looking at ultra-processed food, well, firstly, how do we define ultra-processed? Because there can be loose language used wherein people don't know, should I literally be eating raw meat and raw vegetables? No processing? Is some processing okay? And if so, how much is okay and how much is too much? Well, a few guidelines for you. The ultra-processed foods contain ingredients that are made in the lab to enhance taste, color, and/or shelf life and are not routinely found in your kitchen. Here is what I found to be a wonderful diagram from the journal Nutrients, which I'm proud to say we have been published in, not this paper, but we've been published in this journal, great journal, looking at fresh produce as pineapple and corn. Unprocessed would be whole corn, whole pineapple. Minimally processed would be cut corn or popcorn. Processed would be pineapple slices and syrup in a can, or kernel corn in a can. And ultra processed would be pineapple jelly or some sort of corn chip snack. So this just gives you an example of what the spectrum of food processing looks like. And I'm trying to be better about giving specific examples because you've in the comments asked questions. Well, how do we define ultra processed from minimally processed? And I think that's a great question. So thank you for the feedback in the comments. And this is why myself, and big credit to our research team, dug to try to find a specific tangible example. So now coming to the study, a 2023 meta-analysis of 26 observational trials looking at over 260,000 individuals, finding that higher ultra-processed food intake was associated with a 28% increased risk of depression. And quoting the journal, results of the present study clearly indicate that consuming ultra-processed food was linked to an increased risk of depression. So bear this in mind and do your best to avoid the ultra-processed fast foods, cookies, pastries, things like cakes, ice cream, pizza, and pasta, avoiding hot dogs, chicken nuggets, and soft drinks. Again, it doesn't mean you can't have any of these, but certainly things that you want to be judicious with your consumption. Now, like I mentioned a moment ago, the polyphenols you can get from a number of dietary plans, one of which is a Mediterranean diet. And it was recently found in a meta-analysis that the Mediterranean diet can improve cognitive function. They found that adhering to this diet led to better cognitive health as measured by multiple indices. And my opinion here, it's likely due to the combination of higher food quality, meaning, as one example again, you'll have polyphenols and flavonoids from those plant foods. You'll have fish, and you will likely not be overeating because there is more of a tendency to overeat when people consume processed foods. So it's important to underscore that it may not be all due to the diet regarding the nutrient content, which is totally important, not to discount that, but that another benefit may be contained in the fact that a higher quality food diet is more prone to guard against overeating. And when people don't overeat, they avoid gaining weight and all of the subsequent issues that accompany being overweight. Many healthy diets will include fish. So let's discuss fish oil. This next study did find that fish oil supplementation increased what's known as brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which is also nicknamed Miracle Grow for the brain because it literally causes growth in the brain. A 2023 meta-analysis of 12 randomized control trials looked at placebo versus omega-3 fatty acid supplementation. And again, they did find that the omega-3 supplementation group or groups had increased levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. They found additionally that the most effective dosing was over 2,000 milligrams per day for a term of 10 weeks or less, and that the omega-3s could be obtained from either fish oil or from flaxseed. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. How can we test if modulation of that mechanism leads to an outcome of improved cognitive function? Well, we can look for a different meta-analysis that instead of tracking mechanism, looked at outcome. So this enters a 2020 meta-analysis, which we dug up to fact-check this one claim regarding the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This study looked at cognitive function across 7 clinical trials. This was an elderly subject, so I want to bridle the finding just a touch because it's not always safe to assume what we see in elderly will also happen in middle-aged or younger populations. We may assume to some extent that elderly populations may be easier to get a response from because there may be more malnourishment amongst other things. However, they did find that omega-3s improved cognitive function with a large effect size. And when we think about effect size, said simply, there can be no effect size, meaning it was nil, it was null. There can be small, medium, or large. Effect size gives you a proxy to the clinical effect. A large effect size is almost for certain something someone may notice and say, I feel a little sharper, a little more witty. A small effect size may not move the needle enough for you to perceive the change. So I just want to tie that this meta-analysis looking at cognition, albeit in elderly, did find a large effect size on improving the cognitive function in or across these 7 randomized controlled trials. In our clinic, we somewhat routinely will recommend fish oil supplementation paired with the use of a multivitamin. This next randomized control trial looked at just under 4,000 older adults, about 70 years of age as sort of the average age, who were given placebo or a multivitamin. And in this case, the multivitamin was Centrum Silver, which I do not think is necessarily the highest quality multivitamin. But nevertheless, they found improved memory at 1 year of use. I feel this is important to underscore because sometimes we can get wrapped up in the most bioavailable vitamin out there, and that can lead to buying unnecessarily high quality vitamins. And if that's what you want to do, fine. But if you're on a limited budget, I think it is important to underscore, again, this was not necessarily a super high quality vitamin, meaning the vitamins and minerals therein were not all the highest bioavailability, but nevertheless, we saw the improved memory at 1 year, leading to the group of researchers here to quote, multivitamin supplementation holds promise as a safe and accessible approach to maintaining cognitive health in older age. I said a moment ago that what we see in elderly may not necessarily map on to younger. So we also fact-checked, is there data showing that younger adults can see benefits in cognition when supplementing with a multivitamin? And we were able to locate a 2010 randomized control trial in about 200 healthy females that were between 25 and 50 years of age, given either placebo or a multivitamin. And they were administered a cognitive test at baseline and after 2 months. They found that a multivitamin led to less cognitive fatigue, better accuracy on cognitive tests, and improved multitasking. And I'll just tie in my own experience here, where recently I did go on a high-dose multivitamin, and after about 2 weeks, I noticed my sleep improved. I was changing a couple other things at the same time, so it's hard for me to pinpoint the variable, but my intuitive sense is there was some benefit that I gained from a multivitamin. And I'm just, theorizing here, perhaps my high workload, my high training load, the fact that I'm sauning most days, I was just depleted. And with all the demands, even though my diet's pretty good, I couldn't keep pace with my needs. So as much as I try to be an idealist and get the nutrients needed from diet, I'm also a realist. And even someone paying as much attention to diet as I do seemed to have benefited from use of a multivitamin. Intermittent fasting, 2023 meta-analysis looking at 25 studies wherein people either continued on their habitual baseline diet or underwent intermittent fasting. They did not specify the protocol of the fasting window specifically. They did find that intermittent fasting led to lower C-reactive protein, small effect size, and lower interleukin-6, moderate effect size, both of which are inflammatory markers. But per the usual, let's contrast this with a clinical endpoint of cognitive function. In this case, a 2020 observational trial in healthy older adults who did express a degree of cognitive impairment. They were fasted during daylight hours twice per week, so just a daytime fast 2 days per week, compared to people who were doing no fasting at all. And the researchers commented as follows. Overall, the MCI afflicted, so mild cognitive impairment afflicted, older adults who practiced IF, intermittent fasting, regularly had better cognitive scores and reverted to better cognitive function at a 36-month follow-up. So, something else to consider if you're looking to optimize cognitive function. Let me also say that we want to be careful not to fall into sort of this one-size-fits-all thinking that everyone must fast if they're trying to improve their brain health. Caveats. There were fewer smokers in the fasting group, and there was more weight loss in the fasting group. So we might be able to restate these findings as those who followed a diet that allowed weight loss had improved cognition. And for some people, fasting will be that plan. I can say for myself, this used to work, but it no longer works. What I noticed was happening with myself is I would not eat enough during the day, and I would have a very large meal too late in the day, too close to bedtime, and I was impairing my sleep. So as we've been discussing on the show, remember to think critically and not to just sort of blindly shoehorn yourself into these recommendations, but consider these experiments you can run to see what feels good to you. Okay, and then the final study here ties in histamine. Histamine is a signaling molecule of the immune system. And when people have allergy or inflammation, they can have higher levels of histamine. This is also seen in patients with IBS. To some extent, is a higher production of histamine. Now, this clinical trial administered an enzyme known as DAO, or diamine oxidase, which breaks down histamine. You release this in your GI tract, but some people, when there's damage or inflammation in the lining of the GI tract, don't produce enough. So giving a supplement may help. 100 women with fibromyalgia were given either placebo or DAO, and they did find that this enzyme supplement led to improved fatigue, anxiety, and depression. Interestingly, there was no impact on bloating pain, flatulence, or sleep quality. So I would say net gain, but not a cure-all. Also, I think this is really important to bear in mind that there are other things you can do, in my opinion, that are more upstream, more foundational to improve histamine. We've discussed the one seminal paper, albeit it was criticized for some of the methodology. Nevertheless, finding an 8-fold reduction in lowering histamine when following a low FODMAP diet. And we've also discussed in the past numerous clinical trials that have found various histamine-mediated conditions can be improved by using probiotics. And not a special probiotic, not a particular histamine-free probiotic, any high-quality probiotic, because probiotics have a net antihistamine effect, which is why we see them improve food allergy and also seasonal allergy. I also assume that something that can reduce symptoms and allow the gut a chance to rest and repair, and therefore improve endogenous or internal production of enzymes, could also help, like an elemental diet. Hasn't been shown, but I would be inclined to think that if there was a study that found that, we would see an elemental diet also improves histamine levels, knowing that a elemental diet definitionally will be very low FODMAP, plus very easy to digest, therefore can allow healing. The bigger concept to take away is that, one, DAO supplementation may help, but more importantly, in my view, two, is that things that heal the intestine will allow you to have better production of your own endogenous or intestinal lining derived histamine digesting enzyme, DAO. Okay, so in summary, exercise may lead you to, of your own accord, eat less. Beetroot supplementation improves circulation and brain health. Polyphenols, which are contained in fruits and vegetables, spices, and herbs, have been shown to improve brain health. Ultra-processed food, emphasis ultra, are not healthy for you, obviously. The Mediterranean diet can improve cognition. Fish oil and multivitamin supplementation can also improve cognition, as can fasting. And a DAO enzyme may also be able to help with mood and cognitive function. Remember, the guidelines here are to do what you can. Not all of these things will be the right maneuver or support for all people. You don't have to do all of these things. And approach this with a relaxed perspective. There are no miracle cures. There are many things you can do to improve your health. Take what you like and leave what you don't. And I'll just echo my experience with intermittent fasting was helpful for a while. And eventually that led me to have unhealthy behaviors in terms of backloading my calories too close to bed, impairing my sleep. So as healthy as intermittent fasting can be, again, it won't be the right fit, as will any of these, for everyone all the time. So listen to your body. All right, guys, this is Dr. Ruscio. Please comment, please subscribe, please share. Talk to you next time.